No one lives at a train station, and yet somehow it remembers everyone. This station was built more than a century ago. Thousands of arrivals, thousands of departures. No one stayed. The architects who designed it never intended for it to be a home. They built platforms, waiting rooms, ticket windows, places designed for temporary occupation, for the in-between moments of human life. A train station is not a home. It's the space between homes, the pause between one life and another. The breath held before a decision becomes irreversible. People come here when they're leaving, when they're arriving, when they're running away, when they're running toward, but never when they're staying. And yet the building itself remains constant, unchanging, while everything around it shifts and moves and disappears. The walls remember. They've absorbed a century of conversations, of farewells, of promises made and broken, of tears shed in corners where no one could see. The benches remember. They've held the weight of thousands of bodies, tired travelers, anxious mothers, soldiers going to war, children seeing the world for the first time. The clock remembers. It's been keeping time since the station opened, marking every departure, every arrival, every moment someone chose to leave. And this has been here longer than anyone can explain. A suitcase, old leather, worn at the corners, covered in stickers from places that don't exist anymore. Hotels that have been demolished, countries that have changed their names, railways that no longer run, no name on it, no address, no tag that says who it belongs to or where it's supposed to go. It simply exists in the corner of the waiting room, where it has existed for longer than anyone working here can remember. The first time anyone remembers seeing it was early in the last century. Just after the turn of the century, a porter found it on the platform. Morning shift, before sunrise. He was making his rounds, checking for items left behind from the night trains. People were always leaving things. Umbrellas, newspapers, sometimes a hat. But this was different. A suitcase, expensive looking, real leather, not the cheap kind, the kind a wealthy person would own, the kind you take on a long journey, something important. No owner, no tag, no name. He waited, stood near it for a long time, watched the platform. Someone would come back for it. They always do. People panic when they realize they've left something valuable behind. They come running back, breathless, relieved when they find it still there. But no one came. The morning trains arrived. People got off, rushed past. No one stopped. No one looked at the suitcase. No one claimed it. He asked everyone, the ticket clerks, the other porters, the station master. No one had seen who left it. No one knew anything about it. By evening, he brought it inside. Couldn't just leave it on the platform. Rules said lost items go to the waiting room, near the stove, where lost things go, where people know to look if they've forgotten something. He placed it carefully against the wall, in the corner where the light from the window hit it just right. It sat there for weeks. Every day he checked. Every day he expected someone to claim it, to walk in with a ticket stub and a story about how they'd been in such a rush, how they'd meant to come back sooner. But no one came. And then one morning it was gone, not taken by anyone. No one had signed for it. No one had asked about it. The lost items log showed nothing. It was simply gone. The porter thought maybe he'd been wrong. Maybe it had never been there at all. Maybe he'd imagined the whole thing. But he hadn't. Because a few years later, it appeared again. A young man bought a ticket to the coast. One way. He'd saved for months. Worked double shifts at the factory. Slept in a room with 5 other men. Ate the same meal every day. Also, he could leave. Everything he owned fit in a canvas bag. A change of clothes. A photograph of his mother. A book he'd read so many times the pages were soft. He arrived at the station early, hours before his train. He didn't want to risk missing it. Didn't want anything to go wrong. He sat on the bench, the same bench travelers had sat on for years, worn smooth by the weight of countless bodies, carved with initials, messages, dates that meant something to someone once. He sat there for 2 hours, watching people come and go, watching families say goodbye, watching the clock tick forward. When he stood to leave, he looked at the suitcase. It was there. In the same corner the porter had placed it years before. He stared at it. Something about it felt familiar, like he'd seen it before. But he knew he hadn't. He'd never been to this station before today. He almost said something. To the clerk, to anyone. But the train whistle blew, and he ran. He boarded, found a seat, pressed his face to the window as the train pulled away. He never came back to this town. He built a life somewhere else, found work, found a wife, had children, grew old in a place where no one knew where he'd come from. But sometimes late at night, when he couldn't sleep, he thought about that suitcase, about how it had looked sitting there in the corner, about how it had seemed to be waiting for something. And he wondered if it was still waiting. The war came. Everyone knew it would. They'd heard the reports, seen the newspapers, listened to the radio broadcasts. But knowing doesn't prepare you for when it arrives. Families were told to leave. Take only what you can carry. Move east. Move west. Move anywhere the bombs aren't falling. A woman arrived at the station with 3 children. The oldest was 7, the youngest still in her arms. 2 bags. That's all she'd been able to grab. Clothes. Food for a few days. Blanket. Her husband was already gone. Sent to the front weeks ago. She didn't know where. Didn't know if he was alive. The letters had stopped coming. The platform was crowded. More people than the station had ever seen. Everyone was leaving. Everyone had the same desperate look in their eyes. She set her bags down for just a moment. The baby was crying. The blanket had come loose. She needed both hands to fix it. When she looked up, the train was boarding. The whistle was blowing. People were pushing forward, shouting, climbing over each other. She grabbed the children, grabbed one bag, ran. She didn't realize until the train was moving that she'd left the other bag behind. Inside it were the things she couldn't replace. Her wedding ring, her mother's necklace, the photographs. She pressed her face to the window. Try to see the platform. Try to see if anyone had picked it up, if it was still there. But the train was already too far away. After the crowd cleared, after the trains had stopped running for the day, a station worker walked the platform, checking, making sure no one had been left behind, making sure nothing dangerous had been abandoned. He found a bag, brought it to the office, thought maybe someone would come back for it. Maybe the woman would return. Maybe she'd find a way. But when he opened the door to the storage room, he saw the suitcase. The old one. The leather one with the faded stickers. It was sitting there, in the same corner, like it had never left. He placed the woman's bag beside it, carefully, respectfully. By morning, only the leather suitcase remained. The woman's bag was gone. No one knew where. No one had taken it. The door had been locked all night, but it was gone, and the suitcase sat there, waiting. A girl left for university, first in her family to go. Her father drove her to the station. They didn't speak much during the drive. He wasn't good with words, never had been. Her mother had wanted to come, had planned to, but she'd been crying all morning, couldn't stop. So she stayed home. At the platform, her father carried her suitcase, a new one, bought special for this trip. He'd saved for it, wanted her to have something nice, something that wouldn't fall apart. He set it down near the tracks, stood there with his hands in his pockets, looking at everything except her. She waited for him to say something, some advice, some wisdom, some father-daughter moment she could carry with her. But he just handed her an envelope. Money, more than he should have, more than they could afford. She tried to refuse. He insisted, his voice firm, final. The train came, loud, hissing steam, shaking the platform. She hugged him, quick, awkward, the way they always hugged, like neither of them quite knew how. She got on, found a seat by the window, waved. He waved back, a small gesture, almost invisible. Then he walked to his truck, but he didn't start it, didn't drive away. He sat there for an hour, watching trains come and go, watching people leave, watching the station swallow them up and spit them out somewhere else. When he finally walked back through the station, he saw it, the suitcase, sitting alone on a bench. He stopped, stared at it. Something about it made him think about all the things he'd never said, all the words he kept inside, all the moments he'd let pass without speaking. He stood there for a long time, just looking. Then he left. He never told anyone about that moment. Not his wife, not his daughter, not anyone. But he thought about it every time his daughter called home, every time she told him about her classes, her friends, her new life. He thought about the suitcase and what it meant to leave things behind. A man arrived at midnight. The station was almost empty. Just a clerk behind the counter, half asleep. A janitor mopping the floor. No ticket yet. Just cash in his pocket and a single backpack. He was running from something, or towards something. Maybe both. He didn't know anymore. He'd made the decision 3 hours ago, packed in 10 minutes, left his apartment without locking the door, without leaving a note, without saying goodbye. He bought a ticket to the first train leaving. Didn't matter where. The clerk asked if he was sure. He said yes, paid in cash, took the ticket without looking at it. While he waited, he sat in the corner of the waiting room. The lights were dim. The heating was off. It was cold. The suitcase was there, inches from his feet. He stared at it for 20 minutes, maybe longer. He wondered who left it, why no one claimed it, what was inside, whether he should open it. He reached out once, his hand hovering over the latch, but he didn't touch it. Something stopped him, some feeling he couldn't name, some sense that it wasn't meant for him. His train was called, a crackling voice over the intercom, half the words unclear. He stood, looked at the suitcase one more time. Then he left it there, just like everyone else. On the train, he pressed his forehead against the cold window, watched the station disappear into the darkness. He wondered if he'd made the right choice, leaving, running, starting over. He wondered if the suitcase had belonged to someone like him, someone who'd left everything behind, someone who'd chosen the unknown over the unbearable familiar. He never found out, but years later, when he built a new life, when he found some measure of peace, he still thought about it. The suitcase in the corner, waiting for someone who never came. A businessman missed his connection. His fault. Overslept. Alarm didn't go off. Or maybe it did and he ignored it. Frustrated. Late for a meeting. Important meeting. The kind that could change everything. Make or break his career. He paced the platform with his phone pressed to his ear, shouting at his assistant, shouting at the airline, shouting at anyone who would listen. He didn't notice the suitcase, didn't see the old leather, the faded stickers, the history written in scratches and scuffs. He was too busy, too distracted, too focused on the next thing, the next train, the next flight, the next city. His train arrived. He boarded without looking back, found his seat, opened his laptop, started typing before the train even moved. The suitcase remained, patient, silent, waiting. He never thought about it, never wondered about it. It didn't exist in his world. But the station remembered him, just like it remembered everyone. Over the decade, station workers noticed it. Not everyone, but some. The ones who worked the night shifts, the ones who stayed late, the ones who paid attention to things that didn't move, things that shouldn't be there but were. They never spoke about it to passengers. Didn't want to sound crazy. Didn't want to explain something they didn't understand themselves. But among themselves, quietly, they acknowledged it. Thomas worked there for 30 years. Started as a porter. Ended as assistant station master. He'd seen everything: fights, births, this, marriage proposals, arrests. But the suitcase was the one thing he couldn't explain. He tried to move it once, long time ago. Thought it should go to lost and found, properly cataloged, properly stored. He picked it up, heavier than it looked, carried it to the storage room, locked the door. The next morning, it was back. Same corner, same bench. He asked everyone. No one had moved it. No one had touched it. The storage room had been locked all night. He never moved it again. Maria cleaned the station for 20 years. Every night, mopping floors, wiping windows, emptying trash bins. She cleaned around the suitcase, dusted it sometimes, but never moved it. Once she tried to open it, thought maybe there was identification inside. A name, an address, someone to call. The latches were old but not locked. She pressed the release, heard the click, but she didn't open it. She couldn't explain why. Just a feeling, a sense that it wasn't meant to be opened. Not yet, not by her. She closed the latches, went back to work. By the time she retired, the suitcase was still there. She thought about mentioning it in her exit interview. Thought about asking if anyone knew anything about it. But she didn't. Some things are better left alone. The station was scheduled for renovation. First major overhaul in decades. Everything had to be cleared, cataloged, documented. A young contractor named Daniel was tasked with clearing the waiting room. He'd been hired fresh out of school. This was his first big project. He found the suitcase in its usual corner, covered in dust, surrounded by old newspapers and forgotten umbrellas. He picked it up, turned it over, examined it. Quality leather, old but well made. The kind of thing that lasts. The kind of thing people don't make anymore. He asked the station manager about it. The manager shrugged, said it had been there as long as he could remember. Probably abandoned. Probably empty. Just throw it out. But Daniel didn't throw it out. Something about it felt important, felt significant, like it meant something to someone. He brought it to the work site, set it on a table, under a work lamp, looked at it for a long time. The stickers told a story. Hotels from cities he'd never heard of. Railways that no longer existed. Ports that had been bombed in wars fought before he was born. This suitcase had traveled, had seen things, had belonged to someone who'd gone places, and then it had stopped here. He ran his hand over the leather, felt the scratches, the scars, each one a moment, each one a memory. Then he opened it. Inside there were papers, not many, a dozen, maybe fewer, notes written on different kinds of paper, different ink, different handwriting, different languages, some of them. He picked up the first one. The paper was brittle, yellow with age, the ink faded but readable. It said, "If someone finds this, know that I left because I had to, not because I wanted to. There's a difference. I hope whoever reads this understands the difference. The date was torn off, or maybe there never was one." He picked up another, newer paper, ballpoint pen, blue ink. "If someone finds this, know that I was afraid, terrified, but I left anyway, because staying would have killed me, slowly, quietly, and no one would have noticed. No signature, no date, another note, pencil on notebook paper, smudged, like someone had cried while writing it. If someone finds this, know that I didn't say goodbye, because I didn't know how, because goodbye felt too final, too permanent. I thought maybe if I didn't say it, I could still go back. But I never did." Another, written in careful, neat handwriting. "If someone finds this, know that leaving was the hardest thing I ever did. But staying would have been harder. I chose the pain I could survive over the pain that would have destroyed me." Daniel read them all, slowly, carefully, every word. 12 notes, 12 people, 12 goodbyes that were never said out loud. They were all different, different handwriting, different paper, different decades probably, but they all started the same way. If someone finds this, like they knew, like they understood that someday someone would open the suitcase, would read their words, would know their story. Daniel sat with the notes for a long time, hours. The work site grew quiet around him. Other contractors went home. The sun set. The station lights came on. He didn't know what to do. He thought about trying to find the people who wrote them. But there were no names, no dates he could read, no way to trace them. They could be anywhere, could be dead, could have forgotten they ever wrote these words. He thought about keeping them, preserving them, framing them, putting them in a museum, turning them into something official, something acknowledged. But that felt wrong, too. These weren't meant to be displayed, weren't meant to be analyzed. They were private, personal, meant for someone who would understand without explanation. So he did something else. He put the notes back in the suitcase, one by one, carefully, the way you'd place something precious in a box. He closed the latches, heard them click shut, and he carried the suitcase back to the waiting room, back to the corner, back to the bench where it had sat for over a century. He placed it down, gently, made sure it was positioned right, made sure it looked like it had always looked. When the renovation was finished, when the station reopened with fresh paint and new benches and modern lighting, the suitcase was still there. The station manager asked if it should be removed, asked if it fit with the new aesthetic, the new vision. Daniel said no, said it was part of the station, part of the history, part of what made this place what it was. The manager didn't argue. Maybe he understood. Or maybe he just didn't care enough to fight about it. Now people still pass through. Every day. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Most don't notice the suitcase. Most are too focused on where they're going. Or where they've been. Too busy checking tickets. Checking phones. Checking the time. They walk past it without seeing it, without wondering about it, without asking questions. But some do. Some sit near it. Some look at it. Some reach out and touch the leather. Feel its age, its weight, its presence. Some wonder about it. Wonder where it came from, who it belonged to, why it's still here. And very few, very quietly understand what it means. Understand that it's not really about the suitcase at all. It's about the leaving, the staying, the choosing, the regretting. It's about all the things we carry with us and all the things we leave behind. A train station is not a place where people stay. It's a place where people leave. But leaving doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean the moment stops existing. Doesn't mean the goodbye wasn't real. Doesn't mean the choice wasn't hard. It just means you kept moving. Because staying still wasn't an option. Because life demanded forward motion. Because sometimes the only way to survive is to go. Some places don't ask you to stay. They only ask you to be remembered. And this station with its old benches, its old clock, and its old suitcase remembers everyone. It remembers the porter who found it first, who waited for someone to claim it. It remembers the young man who stared at it before boarding his train, who wondered about it for the rest of his life. It remembers the woman who left her bag behind, who lost the things she couldn't replace. It remembers the father who stood there in silence, who couldn't find the words. It remembers the man who ran at midnight, who left everything behind. It remembers the businessman who never looked, who never wondered. It remembers the workers who noticed, who acknowledged, who understood. It remembers Daniel, who opened it, who read the notes, who put them back. And it remembers you, even if you've never been here, even if you never will be, because we've all left something behind. We've all walked away from something we loved. We've all made the choice to go when staying felt impossible. The station knows this. The suitcase knows this. That's why it stays. That's why it waits. That's why it will never be claimed. Because it belongs to everyone who's ever left, and everyone who's ever stayed behind. Everyone who's ever stood on a platform and wondered if they were making the right choice. Everyone who's ever said goodbye, or didn't say goodbye, or wished they could say goodbye one more time. The train station remembers, even the ones who never looked back, especially the ones who never looked back. E.N.D.